The town of Willow Creek was not known for kindness. It was a dusty settlement on the edge of the frontier, a place where the sun baked the earth until it cracked, and where the people, hardened by struggle, measured worth not by spirit but by strength. In such a place, little Sarah Jane never truly belonged. At 17, she was small, too small, the neighbors said. Frail, with thin wrists and shoulders that could barely carry a bucket of water. Men in the town laughed that she'd never be able to keep a house, let alone tend a farm. Women whispered that she was more like a child than a bride. Even her own kin grew tired of her quiet presence. "You're too little, Sarah," her uncle said one morning, his voice as cold as the tin mug he set down. "We can't keep feeding you if you can't pull your weight. Best you go make your way somewhere else." She'd packed what little she had into a sack, her mother's old Bible, a patched dress, a scrap of ribbon, and walked out into the wide, lonely prairie. She left without tears. She'd learned long ago that crying only made people mock her more. Days passed with her wandering. The grasses whispered around her, tall as her head, hiding her from the sky. At night, coyotes sang, and she curled up by riverbanks for warmth, her stomach gnawing. She was too small to fight, too small to hunt, too small to be noticed. Or so she thought. One evening, as the sun dipped low, she stumbled upon tracks in the dirt, footprints larger than any she'd ever seen. Her hand could fit inside them with room to spare. They led toward the cottonwoods by the creek, and against all caution, she followed. There, by the water's edge, stood a man like a mountain. He was Comanche, broad-shouldered, towering well over 6.5 feet. His chest was bare, muscles carved like stone, his long black hair braided with strips of leather. He carried an axe as if it weighed nothing. Sarah froze. She'd heard the townsfolk's tales. Comanche warriors were fierce, merciless, giants on horseback who could bring ruin to any settlement. But this man was alone. He turned, and his dark eyes fixed on her. "You follow me," he said, his English thick but clear. Sarah swallowed. I didn't mean to. I was just lost." The warrior studied her, his gaze dropping to her thin arms, her worn shoes. She braced for scorn, for the same judgment she'd always known. Instead, his brow softened. "Too small," he murmured, almost to himself. Like a bird, heat rose to her cheeks. "Yes, that's what they say." He did not laugh. He did not turn her away. Instead, he motioned with his great hand. "Come." His name was Dakota, which meant, friend to all. But the world had not been friendly to him. His tribe had been scattered, his family gone to war or sickness, leaving him alone in the wilderness. He built, he hunted, he endured. Loneliness was his shadow. Now, this small girl followed him hesitantly into his clearing, where a half-built cabin stood among the trees. He set his axe aside and gestured to the structure. Logs stacked with careful precision, a frame taking shape against the sky. "You build this?" she asked softly. He nodded. "For winter. For life." His eyes studied her again. "You have no life." She shook her head. "No one wanted me." Dakota's great chest rose and fell. In silence, he picked up another log, thick as Sarah's whole body, and set it into place. Then, without looking at her, he said, "Then I want." Her breath caught. No man had ever said such words to her. Not with intent, not with kindness. She didn't understand, not fully, but when he handed her a small bundle of sticks and said, "You carry this," she obeyed. For the first time, she felt useful. Days turned into weeks. Sarah stayed. She learned Dakota's rhythm, how he rose with the dawn, hunted with his bow, carried logs as though they were twigs. And she found ways to help. She gathered berries, fetched water, mended his clothes with her tiny stitches. At first, she feared he might tire of her weakness. But whenever she faltered, he did not mock. When she spilled water from the bucket, he only took it gently from her hands and showed her how to balance. When she shivered at night, he built the fire higher. When she grew weary, he would lift her as though she weighed no more than a feather and set her upon a log, telling her simply, "Rest." One evening, as the sky burned orange, Sarah sat watching him split wood. His arms swung the axe with power that shook the earth, yet his face was calm, patient. "You are strong," she whispered without meaning to. Dakota paused, resting the axe blade in the stump. "Strong as easy," he said, tapping his chest. Then he reached out one massive finger and touched her hand, so gently it made her tremble. "Small is not easy. Small must be brave." Her eyes filled with tears she couldn't hold back. No one had ever called her brave. The cabin grew. With each log raised, with each shingle laid, Sarah felt a piece of herself being built too. Dakota worked tirelessly, but he never claimed it for himself alone. "Our cabin," he began to call it. "For you, for me." Inside, he made space for her things, a little shelf for her Bible, a peg for her ribbon. He carved her a stool small enough for her frame, and when she blushed at the thoughtfulness, he only said, "Giant build big. Giant also build small." Winter came fierce that year. Snow buried the plains, winds howled like wolves. But inside the cabin, fire crackled, warmth wrapped them close. Sarah cooked what little they had, stews from venison, bread from cornmeal he traded. They shared silence, laughter, words from two worlds that slowly wove together. At night, as she lay on the furs by the fire, she would glance at him sitting near the doorway, his shadow massive on the wall. Protector, builder, friend, but more than that, home. Spring thawed the land, and with it, Sarah's heart bloomed. One morning, as they planted seeds in the soft earth, Dakota looked at her and spoke with quiet certainty. "You are not too small. You fit here. You fit me." Her throat tightened, but she managed to whisper back, "And you are not too big. You make room for me." From that day, they were no longer two lost souls but one life bound together. Word spread, as it always did, and the townsfolk soon heard. Some laughed that the little useless girl had run off to a savage. Others muttered in envy when they saw the sturdy cabin standing proud by the creek. But Sarah no longer cared. She had no need for their approval. She had Dakota, and the cabin he built with hands that could crush stone yet held her as though she were the most fragile treasure in the world. And she, small and overlooked, gave him what no strength could build, belonging. Years passed. The cabin became a home filled with laughter, the smoke curling from its chimney a signal of life where once there was only emptiness. Children's voices rose, half his blood, half hers, strong and small, brave and gentle. Together, they proved that love was not measured by size, nor by the judgment of others, but by the shelter two souls could build for each other. And so it was told in whispers on the prairie. The small girl left behind, and the giant Comanche who built her a cabin, had built instead a legacy. A story of two outcasts who found in each other not weakness, not strength, but wholeness.